Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your inside look at what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
I'm John, and we spent the last 4 episodes talking about each important ingredient in beer, and today we're talking about how to get them, or really some perspective on what your favorite breweries might be going through to bring you the most exciting beers on the market. Before we get to the Beer 101 section, we're going to try and shuffle up things a bit as we drink through beer number 1. Let us know what you think directly by tagging us on Twitter at ThatBeerPodcast.
And I'm Harrison. The source code, what is it? Are we living in a simulation? If so, why can't I move my cat with my mind? In short, it's not that kind of simulation. And in today's Beer 101, we're not going to try and tackle why we're all here, but instead we're going to focus on what's in my beer, which is a nice Dr. Seuss style rhyme that just happened. Sourcing materials, of course, is what I'm talking about, and we're going to talk about more today. It can be a headache, but also full of surprises. So grab your salt and nut roll, and let's get into the Matrix. I mean this episode. But first, as a reminder, Drinking Socially is released every other Wednesday morning. It can be found at podcast.untappd.com.
Or wherever you listen to podcasts, provided they're connected to a payphone and you've taken the right color pill.
That's right. Essentials. That's a given.
Yeah. Sorry, Keanu Reeves. Change up in the air, Harrison. Where are we going?
That's right. We're going to start drinking a beer right here, right now, and not just any old beer. An exciting one. John, what are we starting with today?
I'm pretty excited about this one. That's a fair statement. We're beginning this episode with lunch, like we should begin every meal.
Right.
The beer from Maine Beer Company Lunch, an American-style IPA at 7% ABV. The way Maine describes this beer for us is it's an East Coast version of a West Coast IPA. Intense hop flavors, aromas of tropical and citrus fruits with some pine, which I think we'll taste in this beer, and I'm really looking forward to it. A subtle malt sweetness is going to add some balance to this beer. For a long time in my head, this has been like the East Coast answer to Pliny the Elder, but let's jump in and see. I can tell by the look on your face, Harrison, this one's going to be good.
Ooh, man, the nose, before I even drink it, the nose is just a big old, it's just grapefruit, just screaming grapefruit. It's the morning, and I have a half a grapefruit covered in sugar in front of me, about to
that's
watch Ren and Stimpy. That's a
grapefruit recipe.
That's it. That's start the day off right. Better than a cup of coffee. Man, it really, and there's like a dankness, and then I get the pine. But this is I'm excited. It's been a long time since I've had this beer. I'm pumped to have it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Ooh.
Balance, again, is maybe my favorite traits in a beer. But my one sip review on this is I get the fruit notes, and then they're equally matched, right? Like a Superman duel. They're equally matched with the pine, and then the malt kind of ties everything together, which is now a Superman Venn diagram, not a duel. But
right, that's fine.
Yeah, right. Don't laser fight with 3. Keep it at 2. I don't know. This beer, at first sip, is beautiful. It's reminiscent of me in its masterful layering, the way that nothing kind of jumps out at me too much. It's reminiscent of the times I've drank a Pliny and just realized that there's beauty in the simplicity of doing something perfect.
Yep. I love it. It's well said. Exactly right. Again, we've said it a couple of times, a couple different ways. When you can do something very straightforward very well, it's really hard to do when you're not hiding behind things. And what I always loved Maine Beer Co. for, like all their beers, are they finish very dry. A lot of them do, and that's a good thing for IPAs, in my opinion, especially IPAs that are more bitter, because the hops just stand out. And it makes you want to take that other sip for a lot of reasons. It complements the bitterness, or it accentuates the bitterness, rather, the way these things finish. I mean, they're super, again, straightforward beers. We'll talk about kind of the grain bill in a minute. But yeah, these things, first sip, it's a somehow dry, delicious grapefruit. That's why my brain gets excited for these things. It's like a weird puzzle where your brain's going, this tastes like a juicy grapefruit, but it's also dry. What are you enjoying, Harrison? What's happening out there?
Why is it gone, and why do I want more already?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I'm having right now. This is great. man, that nose is awesome. It's so, and there's almost like a, it's even more than the, it's like there's like the sweetness comes from the nose almost. I don't even know. Mm. All right, cool. What's next? All right, we're doing some fun things today, John. What's happening? So we're gonna drink
One
this beer.
sip
And
in.
we're gonna, yeah.
I'm about 4 sips in. This one's going down really nice.
Sips. Yep.
Sips. That's right. This is a responsible consumption measurement. So 1 sip in, we're 7% IPA here, and nothing really encourages creative thinking like a well-made beer. So let's try something new. For those of you that watched Untappd's virtual festival back in June, you might have seen me kind of challenge Harrison to caption random people's photos of their pets, and it became one of my favorite things that we've ever done together. So we don't have a lot of random pet photos here recording this episode.
Please send them.
Keep them coming
Your random
at that beer podcast. For a little bit of we're gonna try and add, I don't know, some lighthearted fun. We came up with a game. I'm gonna throw a beer at Harrison verbally, and I'm gonna ask him to tell me, what are we doing tonight? You want to do cars?
Let's do cars. I like that. Yeah, that got me thinking about things I don't think about often, especially now. Cars. Let's do that.
Those things that collect leaves out front in between.
That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to throw, we're drinking an American-style IPA from Maine. So based on that style, I'm going to throw an American-style IPA at Harrison. He's going to tell me what car that would be. Bear in mind, there are no right answers, but there are plenty of wrong ones.
Yes. Try and find them. Try and not find them.
First one out of the gates, Harrison. Let's start at the top. A beer from Treehouse, Julius.
Ooh, okay. A Winnebago. A Winnebago is basically a treehouse on wheels. But it's an American classic. This beer is an American classic too. It certainly has been become one. So easy. Winnebago all day. Boom. All right. Now I'm going to flip the tables. I'm going to ask John. We'll keep it in New England. Focal Banger from Alchemist. What are your thoughts there? It's a car. What kind of car?
Never flip the tables on a Bills fan. But so Focal Banger, hopefully there's some car enthusiasts listening. Focal Banger is an Acura NSX. Ooh. It is a supercar through and through. There's nothing wrong with the NSX, but it always gets overlooked for a Ferrari or something else. And in this case, I think Focal Banger often gets overlooked for Heady Topper. And in my opinion, Focal Banger is one of my favorite beers I've ever had.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah.
This is cool. Okay. So West Coast, Harrison, there's a brewery called Monkish out there that we both love. They make a beer called LA Hat.
LA, as in Los Angeles, I'm assuming.
It makes exactly. Right? You can run with this.
All right. That's right. I remember the label. So, all right. So I'm seeing a rented Lamborghini on Sunset Boulevard. It's driven by an intern. He's trying very hard to make a first impression on somebody. But his only reward will be a month of peanut butter sandwiches because he just spent all his money renting the Lamborghini. So that's, but if you don't take a big swing, you'll never hit it out of the park. Or so someone said once.
I think that was Ken Griffey Jr.'s. Yeah,
right. Or senior. Yeah, it's the third. I think you're right. All right. Let's keep it out there on the West Coast. Grapefruit Sculpin from Ballast Point, John.
Easy.
Grapefruit. Okay. All right.
Grapefruit Sculpin is the Chevy Cavalier, right? It was maybe it's a nice one, but Grapefruit Sculpin is the car that you and your friends kind of first got that taste of the open road. The first time you were able to drive at night and put some friends in the car with you, not just your mom or dad who was teaching you how to drive.
Right.
And that's Grapefruit Sculpin. It's that introduction to freedom. And I don't mean that as a knock in the Cavalier. Everybody has to have a first car, and Sculpin, I think, is a good one.
And I still love driving my parents around, so that's the good things never die.
As they drink Grapefruit Sculpin in the back.
That's right.
Okay, let's do one more. There's a beer from New Anthem in town that we both love called Five Thieves.
Oh, John. All right, Thieves. So my brain jumps right away to the Bronco. Ford Bronco. It's a getaway car, and it can comfortably fit 5. I think that's got a bench back seat. I think it will comfortably fit. I don't know, but yeah, that's easy. Bronco, we're cruising. We're out of here. Oh man. All right, my last one for John is Lagunitas IPA. What do you have here? What's the story this beer tells as a car?
Nice. I'm gonna ask for forgiveness here, but the Lagunitas IPA is not necessarily a specific make model of a car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the car that your air quotes friend drove in college. It
Got it.
wasn't. It had tinted windows, but it wasn't like tinted for like the race car look. They were just tinted maybe
Right.
for privacy reasons.
There we go.
They'd usually have to park like on the street, not in your driveway, a little bit farther away from everything. Maybe they'd show up to class just a couple of minutes late, but the nicest people you've
Mm,
ever met.
right.
I think that's how I
Right.
would that's how I would put Lagunitas IPA in a car, and I'd almost wager that no one at Lagunitas would disagree with that.
Right. This sounds like a man who is always has a snack on him. Maybe he has some plastic lined pockets in his pants, giving away Chex Mix or whatever he has. I like this guy. I feel like I know this guy well. I feel like I may have seen him in the mirror for a couple of years in the past every morning. But I love it. This has been fun to do something a little bit different and think about these beers in a new but familiar way as we enjoy this killer from Maine. And as it's opening up, I tell you what, John, it's now like it's almost like the grapefruit. There's a little bit of like it's so grapefruity, but there's almost like it's almost a crackery note. There's like a little bit of some
Okay.
more malt coming in now. It's like maybe the aromatics from the head that are pushing the hops to me are kind of settling down a bit. I'm tasting a bit more of the malt side of this.
For that, I'm really grateful that Maine uses these somewhat large format bottles that aren't
Yes.
gigantic, but
Yes, I know. That's another
um,
thing. That's a good point.
and I have this. I have a sticker from when my sister-in-law visited Maine Beer Co. Their
Ooh.
motto is like simplicity, which echoes their beer. Just do what's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, my gosh, what a nice place we would be living in if everyone just abided to that.
Right. So good, too good to be true. But this beer on Untappd, we'll give you some quick facts about it. So currently, Lunch has more than 341,000 different check-ins, and it carries a 4.2 bottle cap rating, which is
Holy
amazing.
cow!
But I mean, merited. This is awesome. And more than 165,000 ratings too, which is killer. Now, when I looked at Untappd, I had never checked in Lunch, but John, you have, correct?
I have. This is going to be my fifth check-in
Oh,
of Maine's Lunch. It's a beer I enjoy, and oftentimes I still don't check into the same beer um, more than once, even
right.
as much as I'd like to. But my first check-in for Maine's Lunch, I should say, it was almost to the date. It was
Huh.
the 10th of August, 2016.
Oh,
The world was a different place then, but apparently I'm just an early August lunch drinker. And
yeah.
what I remember most about that check-in is it was the first time lunch had ever come to North Carolina that I had ever known about.
Right.
And so I snapped a quick photo. I think I got Ashley, my wife's arm, holding a pint glass like at the growler station that was pouring, like 1 pint per person type
Right.
release. So I
Right.
just snapped a really quick photo of it to add it to my check-in. And Kurt Taylor, at that time the CEO of Untappd, commented on my terrible
That's
photo.
right.
And right underneath that, a good friend of mine from Korea came in and said, "Great beer, terrible photo."
Yep.
And
I see
and
that.
it really was. But
That's great.
nothing like getting picked on for for running out to be the first to try a new beer. I
I
don't
love
regret
it.
it at all.
I
What
know.
about you, Harrison? You
I
haven't
know.
checked into
I've
this
never
before,
checked
but
it. I know. I don't know why. I mean, it might have been. I feel like there's sometimes there's um, bystanders. Something similar like the bystander effect happens in Untappd. The bystander effect is kind of like someone falls down the street and no one goes to help them because everyone assumes everyone else is going to help them, and you all kind of stand there and watch someone laying down in the street, and everyone looks like an idiot. So for Untappd, the version of that is I've had this beer probably every time I had it. I was like, I'm sure I've checked this in, and I never checked it in. I never went and picked up that person off the street. It was just me imagining that I did. So because I've checked in tons of other Maine beers, but not this guy. So I'm going to check it in today for sure, obviously. And it's going to get a fantastic rating from me. I mean, it really. We say it every podcast, but whatever. Like, it's taken me back to times I've had it in the past, and before we opened it, I was like, man, what I remember from Maine Beer Co. is grapefruit, but very dry, and it's delivering again. So this is exactly what I wanted, which is great, and always exciting when it's been a while mine's been easily longer than that, longer than 4 years, probably been 5 or 6 years since I had this. When I have it again, it's like meeting an old friend from college. You pick up kind of right where you left off, all the same stories and all that stuff. Your back hurts a little more, but the laughs are still about the same.
What I don't we can delete this if you want, but if I put you on the spot, I know you haven't finished it yet, but what are you feeling for a rating on this beer?
I mean, I think it really has to be like about a 4 or 5 or so bottle caps. It's just so good personally. And then for the style itself, I mean, it may even be, it's really like, it just, ever I keep drinking it, it's just exactly what I wanted and expected. And maybe even a little bit better than I remember in some hard to pull down kind of way. It's just so well made. You can just taste it in every sip. So maybe even floating closer to a 5. We'll see where I land on that 0.1 scale as I continue this. But it's definitely, I mean, this is, you said it like right. I mean, you could, yes, if you cannot get Pliny the Elder, as you said, John, and you can get Maine lunch, you should get Maine lunch because it's very, very good, and it's as well made, and it's something you should try if you guys haven't yet.
As we continue working on Maine's lunch, I want to take an opportunity just to kind of talk about some new updates at Untappd.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is going on.
Right, it's been busy. It's hard to keep track of the days, but it's not often that I have so many different new things to talk about. So while we sip on this beer, a couple of quick updates from Untappd. One, we moved the blog. Anybody that's ever looked at the Untappd blog before knows it's pretty much just a way to keep track of new badges. You know, whether it's a sponsored badge or a holiday badge, all of them would get posted on the Untappd blog, and that's going to continue. But we've started hosting it. It's available on, you can go to untappd.com/blog. You'll find so much more information now going forward. You can actually, Harrison wrote one of our first blog posts about different emojis that get used on Untappd, and it was written in the very colorful language that Harrison masterfully uses so well. I thought it was a great read. It was really cool to pay attention to. Harrison, do you have, after reviewing those, what was it, 10 emojis you did? Do you have a favorite?
Of those, it would probably be the that's a toss-up. It's kind of, I like the laughing emoji, laugh face emoji was the 10th most used emoji on Untappd. And that one, I think I said something to the effect of, if a beer a day keeps the doctor away and laughter is the best medicine. If you're checking in a beer and laughing about something, you've won. So that one was great. And then I had fun. I was laugh at the two mugs cheersing. I have this like weird, every time I see it, I think of like a ghost having a party, their glasses floating there, only excited about whatever ghosts get excited about, only to be let down, and when they try and drink it, and it just like falls right through them and hits the floor and so on. So that one was the number one, which makes sense. Use emoji on Untappd. So there were a lot of funny things in the middle. I kind of got angry about, I don't know, people using sunglasses for some reason. I don't know, but check it out. I kind of let it all loose in the post and give my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. Which now with this market, it's about a cent and a half, maybe if we're lucky. But anyway, yeah, it was fun. Greg tweeted out, the most used emojis on Untappd, and I thought, well, let's find out a little more about this and let's see what's going on here, and had some fun with it.
Awesome read. You can find not interviews, good night, articles written. Hannah, who helps us out with the podcast a lot, wrote an article highlighting some of the trending beers, and I know she's kind of iterating on that. We've seen a couple of posts about just beer trends on Untappd, which is really exciting. Other news, Untappd.tv or Untappd TV got a fresh coat of paint. Greg kind of reorganized the way that site looks. In my opinion, it looks so much better now. You can find all the previous live interviews he's done with people. We're talking about brewers, beer journalists, influencers in craft beer, and they're always coming up with new ones. Usually about 2 new interviews a week that'll get posted live, and then you can go to Untappd TV and watch them later. We're thinking maybe eventually even you'll be able to watch Drinking Socially YouTube videos right on there as well.
Yeah.
And the last bit, which is kind of hard to process right now, but Untappd announced that we're relaunching the Untappd Charlotte Beer Festival, which is a real life beer festival. And it's still, again, kind of hard to imagine Those of you that had tickets, the original date was May 16th. Obviously, that didn't happen. So if you still have those tickets, you're ready to go. The new date is Saturday, April 24th at Bank of America Stadium, and you're welcome to come join us. If you can't attend, you can still claim a refund on that ticket as well. Of course, we'll put a link to that article in the notes of the show. But for those of you that are going to be around and available, April 24th, 2021, drinking in person. I know Harrison's going to be there, and I'm going to be there, and we're going to start drinking as soon as we can.
That's right.
So hopefully we can catch up with some of you guys out there.
Bring your hoagie necklace, or maybe I'll have a table where we make them together. I don't know.
A
It's
craft
right,
project.
right. Sure, that's good. Everyone pass the deli meat, but probably not. But maybe. Who knows? Who knows? But this is exciting. It's cool to look forward to something like that. So pumped we got the date out there, and yeah, come hang out with us. Come drink some beers in person with our people. It'll be fun.
Otherwise, let's get back to lunch real quick and just kind of round this out.
Yes.
We got some specifics about this beer that I'm going to ask Harrison to provide for us. But the story I was hoping to share was about the whale.
I love it. Right there.
Is beautiful.
That's her.
Right on the label?
Yeah, if you look on the label on lunch, that little looks like kind of like just a line above the word lunch is the back of this humpback whale lunch. But John has the story about
it was something I didn't actually believe when I, how many like kind of beer fables get written, passed from tap room to tap room. But the rumor is that lunch is actually the name of a whale that has been spotted off the coast of Maine since 1982, which is a 37-year-old whale plus. So that's outstanding. She has what looks like a bite that's been taken out of her fin, and that, as Maine will say, that adds to her unique character. The really cool part is that that whale named Lunch off the coast of Maine is what inspired this beer from Maine Beer Co. Basically, that whale's determination to keep swimming became kind of a mantra in the brew house. Like, let's just keep going until we get it right. And it explains the really weird beer name as well.
I know, right? What a hilarious name for a whale that's got a chunk missing, probably from a shark attack or whatever, to call that whale Lunch. And then it's Shark Fest right now. If you're watching this live on Nat Geo and Shark Week on Discovery, there's all kinds of sharks out there. So cool to have a whale of a tail of a beer here to mix it in there. But yeah, I mean, this is specifics about the beer, though. Let's get into what the heck is actually in this thing. So in terms of hops, so they use Amarillo, Centennial, and Simcoe. Those are the three that are featured in this beer. And the malt bill is mostly American two-row, then some Carapils, Caramel 40, which is what gives it this color, combined with the American two-row, and then Munich 10, which also imparts a bit of the color, and then a bit of that crackery flavor I was getting, as well as some red wheat to add some body to it, and some nice fluffy head that this thing started out with. So it's pretty straightforward. The red wheat's a cool touch to give it again a little bit more of a body. It's not a hazy beer, but it is definitely not also completely see-through. It's got some nice haze to it, thanks to that red wheat in part and the Carapils. This thing's available all year, which is pretty cool. So if you're near it, available to get it, again, grab a bottle. This thing's awesome. But classic American hops, some really, again, really, really great malt bill. The Munich 10 also kind of like a nice little, I'm sure there's just a touch of that in there, but it just gives another dimension. It gives it a little bit more body and a little bit of that malt up front, but not too much where you're overwhelmed. Your palate's kind of like, what am I? I'm exhausted. It's like I said, it's still sipping pretty dry right now. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Wrapping up this one, it's bigger, right? We've talked a lot, especially as it's gotten warmer, about lagers and that kind of clean, crisp, refreshing. This beer isn't going to give you that just mowed the lawn 95 degrees out sort of refreshment.
No.
But to Harrison's point, that dry finish, I'm drinking it maybe faster than I should, but it's late. It's been a long day, right? We've all earned this.
Yep.
So that dryness for me helps me just kind of keep coming back and grabbing another sip. And I'd equate that to the reason I love this beer so much.
Yeah. Yep. It's a big grapefruit, fluffy thing. And it's, man, this is right. Now, right, again, kind of the mouthfeel is what's getting me excited. It's like very light. It's dry. It's easy to drink. It's not crushable. You're right, John. You want to finish the lawn and then inhale this, unless you want to take a nap, and that's great. Good for you. But man, I'm pumped. It's been again a long time. I'm excited you found this and decided we should do this on the cast because this is taking me back, and I want to just grab every bottle I can find in town. So look out. If you're in Wilmington, get this beer soon. I may be out there grabbing it all.
So before we get to our ad break, Harrison has done some research, and I love this next kind of little talking point segment. If you're listening along, please reach out, hit us up on Twitter, let us know how this new format or the first half of the show has been going. Let us know what you like or what we could do better. But I'm really excited. Harrison, can you start with the name of this segment? Because I love listening to you say it.
Right, it's the top hop spot, and I nailed it because before it was the top spot and the pot hot top and the
top hop spot or pot spot.
Right, the hat tap pap and whatever. But now it's none of that. It's just the top hop spot. I'll never get that right again. But I did today, which is great. And so we're going to kind of, again, as John said, it's a new segment. Going to kind of highlight ingredients, start a lot of hops out there. So here, let's talk about hops and pick one each time, each episode, and break it down. So today we thought it'd be an easy one to start with Centennial. So not only is it in lunch, the beer we just enjoyed, it's also my favorite hop, if I can claim such a thing, and a foundational one for American craft beer. So so quick kind of background for Centennial. Oftentimes it's referred to as Super Cascade. So Cascade is another hop because it has, but that hop's been around longer than Centennial, so that's a good reference point because it has similar kind of citrus forward characteristics. We were talking a lot about grapefruit today. So again, citrus flavors. It's really in the brewing world, kind of celebrated Centennial is for how versatile it is. It can give you great bitterness, but it also has that amazing grapefruit quality to it on the flavor side, with some undertones of you can pick up lemongrass and pine needles. But really, kind of like the grapefruit and the citrus flavors are what are most prominent, which are also very prominent in Cascade hops as well, and compared to and can be exchanged with if you like run out of this hop in the brew house, you need to make a beer right away with it should have Centennial. You can oftentimes replace it with hops like Chinook, Galena, Nugget, Zeus, Columbus, and of course Cascade. We'll talk about all those hops as we go through this new spotlight now. It was developed, Centennial was in 1974, actually, at Washington State University. So if you don't know, they have a Washington State has a hop breeding program where they will take hops. In this case, it was Brewer's Gold, Fuggle, and East Kent Goldings, which are all UK hops historically, and breed them to make a new species of hop. And from those, that kind of lineage gave us Centennial, which is pretty cool. So two guys, Chuck Zimmerman and S.T. Kenny, got to work in the 70s about that, but it wasn't released until 1990. Centennial was for the beer world to kind of consume and start using. Good timing is that, craft beer kind of starting to take off, but really kind of took off just a few years after that. So again, to my kind of earlier statement, definitely one of the founding hop fathers of American craft beer for sure. Usually found in IPAs and pale ales. However, a lot of stouts use them too, and we actually use them like imperial stouts to kind of cut through that heavy kind of body of a hop. Nice to have something high in bitterness, high in alpha acids, which is what Centennial is most of the time. Beers with it, lunch, of course, we just had it. Bell's Two Hearted. So if you can't get lunch, you probably can get Bell's Two Hearted. That features exclusively Centennial hops, and now they're just grown in Michigan. So Michigan Centennial hops, it's really cool. Coming up, August 15th, Two Hearted Day. So if you need another reason to grab Two Hearted, go ahead and grab it. We're going to celebrate it. Everyone's going to celebrate that day. It'll be fun to watch that beer jump to the top of top trending beers on Untappd. Yep. We have Russian River's Pliny the Elder, which we also spoke about today. Has it in it. Dogfish had 60 Minute is a classic example of just using this and Cascade. So again, a very similar hop to it. And then North Coast, Old Rasputin. So there's an example of an Imperial Stout that drops this in there with cluster, and I think one more hop just to kind of give that beer is 75 IBUs, which we've had in the podcast in the past. It's a big stout, but it's not all malt. It's backed up by a great hop profile, and Centennial kind of leads the charge there. So we're going to write a quick blog post about this with some links to these beers and some more on Untappd that have Centennial in it, so you can kind of find them near you if you haven't had this beer before, or a beer that features it prominently. You can go out there and check it out, and so you can. If you can't grab lunch, you can grab something similar to what we're experiencing today, and all the while kind of celebrate how cool Centennial is and how important it is for the craft beer world we're all lucky to live in today.
Yeah,
That's it for
the beers you named going through. Obviously, lunch is kind of a whale, and also in real life a whale that it was
whales.
named after. Bell's Two Hearted. The beers you were naming are like classic examples of the things I was getting excited about when I was learning what craft beer was, and they're still relevant today. One of the hardest taste tests I've ever done was Bell's Two Hearted versus Founder Centennial.
Yes, sure.
And I understand that they're different, but man, that's so hard. If you want to have some fun on Bell's Two Hearted Day, do a Centennial themed blind taste test.
I would love that. That's right. Of course, another beer, of course, hence the name that features it. But yeah, like we said, we'll pop some in the blog and share more with you there. And yeah, hope you enjoy this new top hop spot. I'm gonna bring a next one next time. We'll see what it is and see how I mess up the name, and it'll be great. But before then, we got a lot more beer to drink, got some fun stuff to talk about, and of course, let's do a quick little check-in with someone from the Untappd store with some messages and things, a familiar voice and face or whatnot. Let's jump in there, and we'll see you on the other side for a huge stout that I'm excited to drink.
Really, really excited about this next beer. We'll see you in just a few. Want to show off your love of Untappd? Check out our online store and pick up Untappd branded glassware, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, more. Depending on how hot or cold you are, go to store.untappd.com and enter the coupon code podcast when you check out. That'll get 20% off anything you order. That's store.untappd.com. Use the coupon code podcast, 20% off for you. Plus, it lets them know that you guys are listening, and we love that here.
Excellent. Okay, guys, and we are back with really the beer of the moment right now. Black is beautiful. It's not just a beer name. It's a statement. It's a ideology. It's exciting and amazing, and I'm pumped to be holding one in my hand from not just one brewery, but like 11 breweries. So we're gonna get to that. On top of that, like 1,000 other ones. But this one we have today was brewed by Gizmo Brew Works in North Carolina. It's an imperial stout. It's 10%, and really, the highlight of it is right on the can. It says brewed to support justice and equality for people of color. That's all you need to know. Now we're going to get into the recipe in a moment, but I'm just pumped to drink it for so many reasons. It's such a cool idea. John and I were there when Greg was talking with Marcus at the virtual festival about this beer, when he was kind of like announcing to the world and telling more people about what it was going to be like, and the response he'd gotten right away from support from other breweries. So excited about that. Also, it's an imperial stout and it's 10%. I want to drink this thing and get excited about imperial stouts when it's 100 degrees outside. This is going to be wonderful.
All temperature is the right temperature for beer.
That's right. Ooh. But John, you've already opened it up and you're having some fun faces over there. What's happening?
The nose. There you go, Harrison. The nose is just, to me, straight coffee beans.
Yes. It's coffee all day.
I'm glad to have another can for maybe lunch tomorrow. I don't even get anything else. There's not even beer in the nose. It's just like coffee beans. It's beautiful.
Man, it's like Vietnamese espresso. It's like that intense coffee that like is almost like that you can almost taste the creaminess of it in this nose. Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to give you I'll give you a one sip review, but I immediately want to go back for a second. This is amazing. To your point, creamy Vietnamese coffee. It's coffee. It's not overpowering. It's not bitter. It almost tastes nitrogenated to me. Like it's so smooth and creamy. And the coffee flavor lingers. I'm going to shut up. I'm going back for more. What do you think, Harrison?
Yeah, this is amazing. Absolutely right. Coffee nose all the way in, and then when you drink it, I mean, this is as we've said before when we've had imperial stouts in front of us. step number 1 and step number 5 and step number 10 are going to be like 3 different beers, really. Like, this is such a temperature dependent, oxygen dependent kind of drink that it's just going to keep changing every second it's out of the can. But the first like taste, it's right, it's dry, but it's not bitter. Like, it's not aggressive at all, and it's in the kind of coffee notes that I'm getting out of this thing, and the darker roasted malts that are clearly making up most of this beer. And then coffee jumps in the back. It's a lot of coffee. It's a lot of,
Oh, oh
and as
yeah.
far as we know, there is no coffee in this. So the actual recipe from Weathered Souls, that they shared out with all the breweries that are brewing their kind of own take on it, highlights the grain bill as about 51% of it is 2-row malt. So that sounds like a lot, but as we talked about in other podcasts, Beer 101, like 70, usually most beers, even Imperial Stouts, are like 70% 2-row. So this is way down at 51, and the rest is Cara Foam, which is very similar. In fact, pretty much identical to the Cara Pills that was in lunch, and then flaked oats, which give lots of body. That makes up 12% of it. 9% of this grain bill is 120 Lovabond, so like this is very dark caramel malt, and then dark chocolate malt, black malt, and a little bit of dextrose. So to finish it off, so you get and sometimes black malt can be most of it's debittered. Debittered black malt, because it can be like tanniny, like very bitter, and it's kind of unenjoyable. This is not that at all. So I would suggest they use debitter black malt, which most breweries do, and that dark chocolate malt, which is great. And the hop schedule is just cascade. It's 60 minutes, and then kind of halfway through, and then it flame out if you want. But they're kind of suggesting a neutral bittering hop. You don't have cascade on hand. But this is, as far as we know, Gizmo and the breweries they brew this with, which we'll talk about in a moment, brewed this recipe pretty much straightforward, as Marcus and Weathered Souls released it, and this is awesome. What a cool base beer. Which brings me to my next point. I've seen tons of versions of this where it's like, this is the base beer, and then it's like peanut butter, or it's other stuff in chocolate in here. I saw one that had like 5 different adjuncts in it that sounded crazy, and exciting. And that's what this is all about. Is we can have a base beer and then try something else that's that base beer with more things in it. It gets very exciting. You can kind of compare and contrast, and it's pretty cool.
So yeah, take a minute and kind of help everyone understand. So black is beautiful. Almost no matter where you live in the country right now, you're going to see a version of this beer, but it's not like Weathered Souls got into distribution countrywide.
Right?
Um,
No.
not that I would mind because this is great, but kind of explain, how, okay, so Marcus in his team, they built the recipe for this beer,
Yeah.
and now we see Gizmo from North Carolina making the beer. It's got the same label. How does that kind of pan out in, I know this is a new process or procedure, but how does that work in the brewing world, Harrison?
Yeah, I mean, so this is right, very unique. I mean, this kind of it's this call to action that Marcus and Weathered Souls kind of absolutely started, and the response from other breweries, and that's really what happened. Is Marcus kind of reached out, or let people know, hey, we're doing this beer. It's called Black is Beautiful. We'd love if any breweries out there were interested to brew it as well, and had the proceeds support a nonprofit that's supporting something like Black Lives Matter, or the ACLU or NAACP, in your community. And he was hoping for 100 breweries, and now more than 1,000 in 20 different countries, and every state is brewing it. So he said, "Hey, I'm trying to help out. I want to help out our community." And all these breweries responded and said, "We do too. Let's make this happen." And now we're drinking kind of the fruits of that labor, and this is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's an awesome point to see how how you can use beer to spread a message. And I think if I can opinionate how open the brewing community is to that. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
there's no bones about it. Most of the professional brewers are white males, right? There's 300 and 330 plus breweries in North Carolina. Two of them are black owned breweries.
yeah,
But the fact that now Marcus in Black is Beautiful has been brewed by, you said, over 1,000 breweries,
that's right.
one in all 50 of the states, all 20 countries. I think that's a great kind of initiative and beginning, and I really, really hope that we see more action come from this.
Yeah, exactly right. It's such a great start, and so cool to see how fast it spread. And just hearing Marcus talk about it at the festival was so cool. Obviously, he was very excited and optimistic, and it's just again, it's amazing when a group of people come together around the shared cause and start doing something about it, and that us as beer fans, just by drinking amazing beer, can also support things that really impact people that need help. So this is, I mean, it's and then it's an amazing beer on top of that. Like that really can't be like. I want to make sure that gets through. This is amazing. This is delicious. I want like I want this to be a beer people brew every year. I'm going to look forward to something like this or miss it if it doesn't come back again. This is phenomenal.
Yeah, and so you mentioned earlier there's 11 collaborators. We've had a few beers on the podcast with three, I think, is probably the most. 11 collaborators on this beer from Gizmo. I'm going to list them out for those of you paying attention at home.
Yeah.
Top of the Hill Brewery and Restaurant, Full Steam, Carolina Brewing Company, Raleigh Brewing Company, Linwood Grill and Brewing Concern, Neuse River Brewing Company, Compass Rose Brewery, Clouds Brewery, Jordan Lake Brewery, and Tobacco Road Brewery, all North Carolina based breweries that collaborated on this beer. Any idea what that looks like, Harrison? Is that like, I mean, I think of like all the group projects I was in college where, like, oh,
Right.
you go ahead and make the presentation and
That's
I'll,
right.
I'll be here tomorrow.
Right. Exactly.
Uh,
I'll hand you the glue stick. Okay, you need to do all right. Yeah, right. And I mean, I have no idea what actually happened. The only thing I can pull from is my personal experience from other collaborations I've done, and then from reading about this beer. But I would imagine that since the proceeds of this are going for this beer specifically, the one we're drinking from Gizmo, it's going to I believe the ACLU's North Carolina chapter. Is that right, John?
yep.
Yeah. So all the proceeds are going there. So I would imagine those breweries are splitting the cost of the ingredients and packaging and paying the brewers to make it, all that stuff. That's what they're collaborating on. This is they're investing in it. They're paying for this beer to be made, and then getting it out there in front of people so they can enjoy it, and then all the proceeds, of course, will go to the ACLU in North Carolina. So that's probably what this is like, and I think even more so because of just the state of the world being in the middle of a pandemic, probably not the best idea to be having a collaboration brews happening all the time, especially with 11 different breweries in one room. Um, I'm sure they're just kind of supporting each other, making it happen. Maybe collaborate on the recipe. It could also be instead of as simple as like, hey, take some of my pale malt. We have some dark malt over here. Carolina Brew Co. Full Steam has the yeast. Gizmo brings the hops. It could also be literally we already have these ingredients. Let's bring them over to Gizmo, drop them off, have them brew it. So it could have been a couple different ways this happened. I know that every Philadelphia Beer Week, the breweries around Philadelphia brewed a beer called Brotherly Suds, and
Nice. Very
every year,
Philly.
exactly,
Yeah.
every year was different, and that was all the brewer. Well, what it was presented as is all the brewers getting together, making a beer together. But what was actually happened was all the brewers got together and drank a bunch of beer, and the assistant brewer that was on shift that day at whatever brewery they made it at actually made it, sweating in like the mash tun and killing himself making this huge beer. And then I've heard other collaborations where right, it's more hands on, but there's no right or wrong way to do it, and there's no kind of mold you have to fit in. But for this one, I mean, clearly, obviously, they're all aligned with this message and want to get it out there and wanted to be a part of it. And it may very well have been as many breweries as we see in this one collaboration, kind of driven by the pandemic. They maybe all wanted to brew it or all wanted to collaborate on it in different ways, but just couldn't logistically do it. So decided, let's stay safe and be safe, and let's get Gizmo what they need to make this beer and make it happen and support them every step of the way. So, and that's ultimately, again, too many cooks in the kitchen. It's probably good to say, you brew this beer, it's your brew house, you know how it works. Let me support you however you need me to, but you can't, like, it doesn't make any sense to have like 10 people take a turn to the mash paddle.
Well,
Right.
yeah. I mean,
Right. Like,
that's how we made cookies growing up. But
they still make
I
Tootsie
see
Rolls
your
that way.
point.
Yeah.
I
Um,
think what was it? This particular beer. One thing that I find really cool in the way Untappd works is like you haven't seen Black is Beautiful as a top trending beer, but it's because there's so many different versions of it. Like we're
Oh
drinking the
yeah,
Gizmo one.
yeah.
Earlier today, I drank one that was a collaboration between Wrightsville Beach and True
Oh,
Colors Brewing,
nice.
which is a cool brewery that's kind of in the process of getting their feet underneath them and producing some beer. We'll hopefully have them on the show
Oh
soon,
yeah.
but and I can, because this was just a few hours ago that I had their version of this beer, and it was entirely different. There was a little more
Huh.
vanilla. The coffee wasn't there at all.
Hmm.
So what I think is really cool is that this Black is Beautiful beer has been checked in by so many people, but so many different variations of it. And
Yeah.
there's a badge for it on Untappd. You can look and you can see all the beers that are available in the badge. But this is, I think it's cheers to you, Marcus, for kind of setting this ship in motion, and cheers to everyone else for paddling along and putting us in the right direction.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is awesome. This is delicious. And right now, exactly. Unfortunate. Well, not unfortunate, but it's just the way Untappd works. Is that you're right? There is no, since every brewery is making their own beer. There is no page you can go to and say checked in this many times, this many people, so on and so forth. But I have to imagine, and maybe we'll kind of pull some of this stuff and share it with you guys later. That this all the versions of this beer combined must be, you know, one of the top rated trending beers. Tap right now probably hasn't for a while. So cool that we're drinking one. This is the first time I've had any of them, and now I knew I would open up this path and be like, okay, I need to try everyone I can get, and I need to compare them all, and I need to source some and have some in 6 months, and my brain is immediately going into how can I spend as much money as possible. Um,
Oh, but it's so true. I mean, like your point about, here's the base recipe, but also feel free to implore any creative desires you have.
yes,
So
yes,
this is, I mean, for me, this is my dream. Give me 12 different. I want to go to a tapas restaurant.
yep.
That's an appetizer restaurant. If my dad's listening, it's not a topless restaurant. Um, but I
Right.
want that variety. Give me 6 different pale ales with the same base. I love kind of picking differences in there, and this is a great beer if you have a few of them in your area.
Absolutely.
If you grab everything you can. From the two that I've had today, they can be very different.
That's really cool. All right, and again, that's what makes this exciting. That's what makes any collaboration exciting, and certainly something like this. It's really, really unique. And oh man, I don't. I mean, it's probably the widest, I guess, shared or brewed collaboration beer where there is variation encouraged. So again, base recipe is the same, but have it in New York or have it in the same town like you did today, two different versions of it, and they're wildly different, which does make it very interesting. And it's like a beer fan. Again, my like kind of collector and person in me, the beer fan in me is like, let's go and get them as many as we can and kind of try them back to back because who knows, maybe again, same exact recipe, brewed states apart. There may be some kind of difference there that I want to pick up on and experience before it's gone. This is cool.
And this is an amazing segue for our next topic in the show today, which is Beer 101 sourcing materials. Um, the point you were kind of touching on, Harrison, where like, people have brewed this beer in New York. It was originated, the recipe was made in Texas. It's in 20 different countries. So the first question I have, like as a former chef, right?
Right.
Like you can't get the same spinach is generally spinach, but you can't get the same ingredients from even region to region if you're
Yeah.
getting them really locally. So I'm really
Sure.
excited to kind of work through our Beer 101 topic, which is sourcing materials today for your brew, getting
Yes.
ready for the brew day, which we'll talk about on episode 18 coming up. But
Hmm.
I'm ready if you are, Harrison.
Let's do it. Exactly right. Let's go. Let's get in there, Tom. What do you got for me?
So, question number one: there's, I think, a big difference for many reasons in sourcing materials for like a homebrew weekend, a 5 barrel professional brewery, and like a giant beer factory. So maybe I don't know. I would assume there is, at least in volume. But let's kind of start at the beginning, and I want to kind of learn what goes into sourcing those materials. So like when I'm getting ready to make dinner, it might be a Blue Apron box, not sponsored, Blue Apron box that's dropped off at my porch. I might swing by the grocery store. If I'm lucky, I might go to the farmer's market. when we're talking about how a brewery is putting a beer together, how does that like kind of shopping list formulate? What's it like sourcing materials to make a beer?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And really, I mean, it's all about your supplier, just like a chef, or just like you walking in the grocery store, choosing one grocery store over the other, or choosing the lettuce that comes from this farm compared to this other farm. Like you have these at a farmer's market, you have these decisions to make. Uh, Same with a brewery. So, and there are a lot of so you can go right to the supplier itself and say, I want to work with this farm that makes these hops, or it mills this grain or whatever, or you can use kind of wholesalers and suppliers who have connections with all these farms already, and build relationships there. But it's just about relationships and about building them with people you like, business you like, for whatever reason. Just like any other business out there, you kind of go and explore. The kind of exploratory part of any new brewery is a lot of fun. Where you will go out there and kind of smell the hops from this farm, and I mean, they'll send you samples in a briefcase. A lot of these malt houses of all their malts, little sample packets of it, even like small batch sizes of it. So you can brew like a 5 gallon batch of beer with the malt from this wholesaler who has these suppliers, and test it out, like literally brew some beer, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to get very hands on and sample stuff before you even open your brewery. So that's absolutely possible, and pretty much every malt house and supply house for breweries offer samples like that ahead of time. On the homebrewer side of things, which is what is really cool right now, is that a lot of these same companies that are supplying hops and yeasts and malt to commercial brewers, they're also supplying them to home brewers. So you can get like the same hops and malt that your favorite brewery is using, and the same yeast and all that stuff, and make a clone of that beer pretty easily now. Like how it come from the same farm, same batch, all that stuff, and really match it up, which is that's not always been the case. So it's an amazing time to be a home brewer. You could with good practices and equipment, make like pretty much an identical beer to something you're enjoying from a commercial brewery that obviously is um, much bigger and has the advantages of that a commercial brewery does. You can duplicate stuff in your garage now that you couldn't 5-10 years ago, which is really cool.
Okay, that's actually really exciting. Any advantage a home brewer can get is outstanding.
Yep.
Um, so next question, then I want to talk about hops just because I think that was the
Yes.
most listened to of the Beer 101 episodes we did was about hops,
Right.
and they're the most exciting part of beer today.
Yeah.
So, we talked about lunch. It's Amarillo, Centennial, Simcoe. I'm pretty sure I said I mispronounced all of those. Um, is it easy enough to run, like, do you just like go out to the hop store and grab like a hand, I need Amarillo, I'll be back
Right.
tomorrow for more? Like,
Exactly.
how's hop purchasing work?
Right. Scoop it up like out of the jelly bean store.
Yeah,
Just I'll take a little bit of this
exactly.
one, just pull your bag over, and you mix your own. So it's not quite that easy. And really, I mean, so the hop market has changed a lot over the past couple of years. 10 years ago, uh, you really couldn't, as a hop farmer, plant hops fast enough. Like literally, could not do it. Each year, Hop Union, which is now Yakima Chief, they're a collection of hop farmers in the Pacific Northwest. They would plant about 10% more hops year over year, but the demand was 20% more hops year over year. So they could not keep up, and it takes, uh, on average, about 4 years for like a hop rhizome and a hop crop to mature from the first year you plant it to when you can actually harvest it. So like keeping up with demand was really impossible in a huge hop producing part of the world, in Oregon and Washington State. So you had breweries, and breweries knew that. So you had breweries like Stone that would buy like their hop contract for 5 years at a time. Like, I remember at one point when I was brewing, they were secure through 2020. And so a hop contract is just what it sounds like. At the beginning of a year, you go to the hop farmers and you say, I need this many pounds of Amarillo and Centennial and Citra and so on, and they say, okay, we can guarantee you that much, and you accept shipments when you need it and all that stuff, and you're signing a contract with that farm and committing, that you're going to pay the price they're offering, and that you want as much as they're going to offer you. So that has to be done in advance, and Stone knew that and saw where the kind of tide was going and did a good job of getting in front of it. There are other even larger international breweries that would kind of do the opposite of that, and they would come in year over year and buy all the hops of a certain style, like Cascade, which is in the recipe Marcus gave out for this beer, and probably in this one, um, and all over the place. We talked about it earlier with Centennial being a super Cascade. That beer is like one of the most produced hops, or that hop rather, one of the produced hops in the world. And breweries would buy that up year over year, like almost all of it, leaving craft brewers kind of like looking around, like, "Hey, where can I get this? I need this for the beer I always brew." A good story I always share is Two Roads Brewing in Connecticut. It's now, it's very storied, won tons of awards. Bill Murkowski is their head brewer, who literally wrote the books on saisons and farmhouse ales. He's a master. When they first started, and we've had him on the. If you haven't seen it yet, jump on Untappd TV and look at our interview with him. Greg and him had a blast. He's such a cool guy to listen to and talk about beer. If you really want to nerd out, he's amazing. And so Two Roads, when they opened up, they literally couldn't get enough hops. Like they knew year one, we can't make as much beer as we could in this huge, like 500,000 barrel brew house, because it just hops didn't exist. They couldn't get them. They were already spoken for. And so they kind of dealt with this spot market, which is just what it sounds like. Kind of either hop farms maybe have a little bit more of a hop because someone didn't need quite as much and they had it, they give it up for sale, or a brewery's like, "We got too much. You hear you want some." They were kind of like battling in this like almost second tier market, paying premiums for a lot of hops because they just couldn't get them. And now they're making beers like Too Juicy, which is amazing. I put it up there with any double IPA in the world, but it took a long time to get there just for the logistical bottleneck of so many breweries are opening at once. There are only so many hops, and hops take time to mature and become usable. So, and I was in Connecticut when that happened and kind of experienced it firsthand. Where year over year, their Road to Ruin, which is their flagship IPA, changed. Where now it's like, again, amazing and a great go-to IPA, but it's totally different today than it was when they first started, which was really just due to demand and supply and all that kind of basic economic stuff that hops is a really good example of.
Yeah, that story you were kind of telling reminds me of like every year when a new PlayStation or Xbox comes out,
Right.
and you buy, not you, evil people, buy as many as they can, and then would go. I mean, I remember like seeing the PlayStation 2 on eBay for $1,000, and
Yeah, right.
perhaps the second tier hop market didn't get to that point, but
Yeah.
it's something I didn't often consider, right? When
Yeah.
you're drinking that beer.
Sure.
And,
Right.
that brings a good point for my follow-up question. So let's kind of, what do you think about local versus macro? Like,
Yes.
is there a big benefit to working with like the small hop grower in your neighborhood, or a bigger benefit to going with a big supply chain?
Exactly. Right.
Awesome.
Right. So when you're right, you're kind of I kind of you're leading right into the next point. So what happens when you, as a smaller brewery, even a regional brewery, can't get the hops you want? You have a demand and there is no supply for it. Well, a lot of smart people out there, smart hop growers, malt farmers, malt house owners, realize this. And so yes, now there are hop farms in Michigan and Colorado and Idaho. Didn't exist 10 plus years ago, but because these breweries just needed more hops, needed more supplies, and they were able to get, the demand existed. And so someone said, "This is a great idea. Let's make hops for Bell's." I mean, Bell's used to get their Centennial from the Pacific Northwest. Now they just get Michigan hops, which is really cool. That couldn't have happened 10 years ago. And so when that happens and there's a bottleneck, something's going to break somewhere. Either the breweries aren't going to be able to support themselves anymore, or the actual or someone's going to step up and say, "Hey, I can actually help you out with this. I have a hop farm. Come check out my hops." And so the local versus macro, it's kind of like this really cool evolution that we have lived through and seen. Where me personally, like there was a beer we brewed in Chamonix Creek called Churchville Lager that was our flagship lager. It won the gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival in 2010, I believe, and then it won bronze, I think, a couple of times. Anyway, it's a great beer. It was celebrated. It kind of put us on the map when that happened. And then we brewed a local version of it. So we work with Deer Creek Malt House, which is a malt house in Pennsylvania, I think out near Lancaster, PA, and just got all the malt for that beer from them and brewed like a taproom exclusive version of that beer with just local malt, and it was amazing. And it had all these new kind of flavors and nuances and all the stuff about it that didn't exist before. And that malt house, though, it really came to be because of the growth of craft beer, because how so many brewers are opening up and the demand was so high. They were like, all right, now it makes sense to have a functioning malt house that can supply the 100 breweries that I'm closest to, or whatever it was. So there again, it's great. And it's the same debate you have and I have as a consumer of like, do I get that shirt for $2 less online, have it dropped up to my store, or do I go down the street and pay a little more for it, but I have it today? And so you're looking at convenience, economics. You're looking at all kinds of factors. Just like any buying decision, a brewery goes through that same thing. Um, Although it's kind of unique though, because with hops specifically, you are kind of trying to project out like years in advance sometimes of what will I need a year from now so I can reserve it today. And that's where things get tricky. But then you're talking about relationships now, and maybe it's easier to have a conversation with a hop grower in town or in the same state as me of, hey, I want to do this. I'm only prepared to commit to this though. Can you work with me? Where if you're reaching out to maybe a larger supplier that's dealing with more customers, again, now you're just talking about kind of like that experience of customer engagement and how and building a rapport there that perhaps local suppliers would have an advantage on compared to larger ones. So it's very interesting, the economics of it. And I had great relationships with both local reps for local malt houses and hop growers, and then the national ones, all great guys, all providing an amazing service. But right, you have the freedom now as a brewery to shop around a bit and kind of explore some things and make some decisions based on whatever you value as a business of where you're going to get your supplies from. And so that's great for the brewing world, because that means that it's on the suppliers to provide the best product and service they can. And ultimately that's going to trickle down to us drinking just better beer because there's just more quality stuff out there, whether it be yeast, hops, whatever it is. It's again, so many reasons for why now is an amazing time to drink beer, and just the quality of ingredients is one that I love talking about and glad we are today.
So I don't even know how to wrap all that up, but one of the questions I had as a follow up was kind of like the difference between sourcing locally versus sourcing macro. But it seems very much like all decisions, right? Like you might save a little money, you might sacrifice a little quality. I wanna finish this beer 101 with hopefully an exciting question, or at least something I think of all the time, and it's adjuncts.
Yes.
We talked about the coffee flavor in this beer. We could have added Madagascar vanilla to a version of it, and
right.
on and on, like Oreo. So these are some of the most exciting flavors in beer today. The question is, like, is it always someone that's peeling limes and squeezing them into a Mexican lager? Is it like, are there breweries where they're just chucking sleeves of Oreos into a mash tun, or is it sometimes just an extract or something even more obtuse than that? Talk about sourcing adjuncts, and is there a benefit to having a Costco card?
Yeah, right. Absolutely right. We're gonna make a crazy nut beer. Let's get all the awesome unsalted nuts from. That'd be kind of tough and probably a mess. There's a lot of fat nuts. You don't really want fat. Fat in your beer is not going to mix well. But yeah. So again, kind of taking it back to the basics. When you're making a beer, you're just trying to pull sugar out of any source you can to turn that sugar into booze. So where the sugar comes from obviously matters, because you're dealing with beer yeast, so it can't eat everything. There's certain fermentable sugars you need to be giving that yeast to make a beer and not make some weird chunky soup that also gets you drunk, which would be weird, but I'm sure it's happened, like a wassail. But more to your point, so there's a brewery in town, Wilmington Brewing Company. They do a couple beers a year. One is Donut Party, where they partner with a local donut shop. It's a porter, and they dump a bunch of donuts in the mash tun. They're brewing with donuts, man. Like, there's tons of sugar in that already baked bread, that donut, and starches they can pull out and reuse and flavor. They also do a pumpkin pie beer where they put 100 pumpkin pies in a pumpkin ale, and it's amazing. So
it is really good.
Right, yeah. I love that beer. I love it, and it's pumpkin's interesting. We talked about it last year. We'll talk about it probably again this year, where it's such a starchy, such a fibrous, fruit, squash. And it's there you go. And it's it's not a lot of sugar, but it provides a lot of body, a lot of unfermentable sugars. So that's a cool example for me personally. We brewed a beer at Neshaminy Creek called Leon. It was a Russian Imperial Stout, and on the label it said brewed with marshmallow fluff, chocolate, and graham cracker, cacao nibs, and graham crackers, and all of those things went into that beer. Like, it was no bottle of marshmallow fluff, and we dumped it in, and the fluff's done. Nope, that was some guy with a wooden paddle with a bowl over a steaming pot of water, trying to melt that down enough so that it could be looking up to add it to a beer. So same with like the chocolate and the graham cracker, crushing graham crackers and putting them in an actual that was put in the actual the whirlpool, not in the mash. So that beer was a mess to make, but a lot of fun. We always barrel aged it. It was an amazing beer. So you're just sourcing the adjunct is referring to like another source, an adjunct source of sugar, of starches needed to make alcohol. So there are breweries that use extracts. I've never used them, and that's not a knock on extracts. Like, at a certain point, a certain volume of beer, you can't put 1,000 pumpkins in a 100-barrel fermenter or whatever. It's just not. It's going to soak up too much water, and you're going to try and pull beer out of it, and there's going to be no beer there. It's going to be all absorbed, in that porous, fibrous materials that you're dropping in there. So at a certain point, it doesn't make sense to just use to not use extract. So we never had to, but again, there's a very real reason. If you actually want a beer in your glass and not, again, some chunky weird soup, extracts have to enter in the equation at some point. That's why they're there. But I spent tons of time, and I spent so much time in a brewery pureeing fruit, more than I realized I ever would. There'd be days I would just sit in the back and just with a huge immersion blender the size of my torso, just blending peaches and whatever the heck they gave me to add to our barrel program. So, it's sweaty, boring. Well, not boring. It was exhausting. You sleep better than you ever had. Kind of like riding a jackhammer all day, but you're inside listening to heavy metal and smell like fruit afterwards, instead of like asphalt. So there's some pluses there. To an extent, but yeah, it's all about personal preference. You have to look at logistics. You have to measure the right things, and I mean, every brewery I've encountered, they're all experts now at what they're doing, which is great. So I would say don't worry about that. If you're someone who's like, is this extract or is it the real thing? Trust that brewery to make that call on the floor based on their equipment and what they have to produce to make that right decision and to deliver you an awesome beer in your glass. There's nothing wrong with drinking some beer that had pumpkin extract in it. You may like it more, and maybe it's more pumpkin-y or something. And if that's your goal, then they're checking off that checkbox for you, and that's a successful beer. But yeah, it's certainly fun. And yes, there are absolutely people peeling limes somewhere in a brewery probably right now for some lime goza. They got to peel 1,000 limes tonight. That's your job. Welcome to work, and off you go to it. And probably happy to do it because at the end of the day, there's a beer waiting for them right in that tap room.
That's probably the best, new employee training.
Right.
Like,
man.
what's it like to work here? Honestly, it's painstaking and really difficult.
Right,
exactly. And some days you're going to get here at 5 a.m. and you're really going to wish you didn't get out of bed. But at the end, there's a beer.
There's a cold beer that's going to taste better than any beer you've ever had. Right. Do you have back problems? No. All right. You will.
Good. Yeah, not yet.
I know. That's a whole other episode we can do. My first day on the job, that was a trial. That's a trial by fire. I kind of walked into a very similar situation of, is this what every day is? I kind of walked away like, all right, where's that beer? When do we start drinking here? He's drinking. Well, he's getting off work. You're starting work. You don't drink anything. All right. Never mind me.
Oh man, that would be a great tie off to the Beer 101 series. Let us know if you want to hear about Harrison's first brew day, complete with claymate. No,
maybe.
What do we got coming up on the next Beer 101?
That's right. The next episode is the brew day. So we talked a lot about what do we need to make a beer, how do we get it in the brew house or in your home brewery, in your garage or your kitchen or wherever. Now you have all this stuff. What do you do? So we're going to kind of walk you through step by step what happens on the day you make a beer. I love it. Those were always the nights I slept the best after a brew day. Maybe I'll share some horror stories of what it takes to brew an 11 or I think it was a 12% quad. A lot. Every morsel and fiber of your soul will be tested at 5 o'clock in the morning. But we'll get there. But until then, John, Where can everybody find us out there?
I think everywhere. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Podcasts. Yes, Google Podcasts is a thing now, and it's brilliant for you Android users. YouTube, but more importantly than all that, seriously, it's you. Reach out to us directly on Twitter. Let us know what you liked or didn't like or want more of, or let us know what questions you have about the upcoming Brew Day episode. Hit us up on Twitter. It's at That Beer Podcast. You can find me and Harrison there representing Drinking Socially. Otherwise, show notes for this episode will be available at podcast.untappd.com. Connect with me, Harrison, or the whole Facebook group if you want to get involved with all of us over there on facebook.com/drinkingsocially. Otherwise,
yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Cheers!
Cheers! Still a little beer left in this one.